Peace and blessings, everyone. Abundant thank yous for tuning into this video discussion on the Sargasso Sea. My name is Ramira, a NOAA CCME scholar and senior environmental studies major at the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, as well as currently an intern for Environment Florida, which is a statewide citizen-based advocacy organization that works on clean air, clean water, and open spaces. Today's video discussion is part of the EF's ocean conservation efforts in raising awareness for the marine biosphere by addressing the anthropocentric issues that threaten them. I am ecstatic to introduce to you all an associate I know quite well. He is a research scientist and mentor for NOAA Center for Coastal and Marine Ecosystems, a professor within the School of Environment at FAMU, Go Rattlers, with a master's and doctoral degree in oceanography from Florida State University. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Stephen L. Morey.
Pleasure to be with you.
Yes, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Lots of Zoom meetings today.
That's the new normal. So
yes.
I wanted to ask you, because I know that you are, part of your master's and doctorals was getting into oceanography. I wanted to know what made you interested in being in that field.
So I was an undergraduate student studying mathematics and computer science at the University of Missouri, thinking I was going to be a computer programmer. And then in my senior year, I decided I didn't want to be a computer programmer. And so I was waiting in the hallway to talk to my mathematics advisor about other opportunities when I spied a poster on the wall from a university advertising toward math majors, saying, "Are you interested in a career in oceanography?" And being in Missouri, I didn't know about this field. And I read it and explained how I could apply all I had done with computer science and applied mathematics into this field of oceanography, specifically physical oceanography. So I answered yes, and I became an oceanographer. I've loved it ever since.
Wow, okay. That's a really good story. Really good story. Yep, I know that when it comes to me being a environmental studies major, of course I got to learn the sciences, and one of that was also dealing with oceanography or taking marine environment with the Dr. Martinez from FAMU. So it's definitely a lot. It's a lot of science-based information that I had to remember, and it's just fascinating how the world works when it comes to the ocean. So it's a really good field. So today, yes, I wanted to talk with you about the Sargasso Sea. So I know some people may not know what that is. So can you tell me exactly what is that?
So the Sargasso Sea is the center, essentially, of the North Atlantic subtropical gyre. Now, a gyre is this large ocean-wide scale circulation, and we find them in the northern and southern hemispheres in all the oceans. And is termed the Sargasso Sea, and it was named that centuries ago because explorers were finding large amounts of sargassum, which is a floating seaweed, in the middle of the Sargasso Sea.
Okay, interesting. So this vast pass of floating seaweed, it's in the mid-Atlantic, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how exactly, because you're interested in the physics and all, how exactly did the sea form to be the way that it is today? I know that there's the gyres or gyres, but how exactly did that happen to be?
So the gyre circulation in the oceans is driven by the dominant wind patterns around the Earth. The subtropical gyre is driven by the easterly trade winds. So these are the low latitude trade winds that blow from the east to the west around the whole Earth, and the latitude westerlies. So these are the winds around 45 degrees or so north that blow from west to east. And these winds force circulation. There's some major currents to the north and the south of the gyre, but the gyre is essentially the recirculation caused by these winds. So if you have taken oceanography, you may remember your Ekman transport. Ekman transport in the surface of the ocean in the northern hemisphere is to the right of the wind. So the winds that blow from east to west in the tropics have this surface drift toward the north. And then the westerlies that blow produce have this drift from north to south. So you can see that this surface drift converges in this subtropical region. So it's sort of a high pressure bulge, if you will, in the middle of this gyre. You may also remember from your marine science discussion of geostrophy or geostrophic currents. Geostrophic currents are the large scale currents that are driven by the pressure difference in the ocean. And the northern, well, they always have the high pressure to the right in the northern hemisphere. So therefore, you get a circulation that goes clockwise around this high pressure formed by the convergence of the surface water in the subtropical gyre.
Oh, wow. Okay. So with all that pressure and all, I kind of can't really imagine it, but probably there is. But is there any marine life that's within the Sargasso Sea?
Yes, there is, but it's interesting. When you get this convergence of surface waters, it pushes down the thermocline. The thermocline is what separates the upper warm waters from the deeper cold waters. Now, it turns out most of the nutrients in the ocean are below the thermocline, yet the sunlight is at the surface. When the thermocline is deep, you don't get much light where you have the nutrients, and therefore you don't foster growth of phytoplankton, the microscopic. So the middle of the subtropical gyre, the Sargasso Sea, is actually somewhat of a desert when it comes to marine life in many cases. You don't have a lot of plant life there. So most of what you get in there are larger, what we would call pelagics, fish that swim through it. Now we talked earlier about the sargassum that forms. Sargassum will form the microenvironments that are actually productive and do harbor a large number of forage species, and then other fish will congregate there. So where you see these patches of sargassum, these are critically important for marine life in the Sargasso Sea.
Okay. Well, it seems like you know a lot when it comes to, the Sargasso Sea itself. Have you ever actually went there to do research on the Sargasso Sea?
Oh, most of my field research has been in the Gulf of Mexico or in the Pacific Ocean. And then I've done some other computer modeling of some other areas. So no, I've not yet been to the Sargasso Sea.
Okay. So, well, do you believe that, or could you think of any places that are perhaps in the Florida area or even in the Gulf of Mexico that that's like the Sargasso Sea? Or is it really unique?
Well, the Sargasso Sea is unique in the Atlantic Ocean in that it's large basin scale. It does have similar in Pacific Ocean, for example. The North Pacific subtropical gyre is the same way. It's largely clear blue water, doesn't have a lot of life, and it collects stuff at the surface. In the Pacific Ocean, we know it collects garbage. There's your garbage. The Atlantic Ocean subtropical gyre, Sargasso Sea, is also collecting garbage, but it's just smaller than in the Pacific. In the Gulf of Mexico, the loop current is the main current, and it enters between Cuba and Mexico, and then it loops around in the Gulf of Mexico and exits through Florida Straits, and then heads up the eastern seaboard. This actually forms the western boundary of the Sargasso Sea. But in the Gulf of Mexico, this loop current sometimes pinches off these rather large eddies. Kilometers across. Now the Sargasso Sea is thousands of kilometers across. But they're also clockwise circulating high pressure systems that are similarly what we call oligotrophic. They don't have a lot of plant life in the middles. And so in these smaller eddies, same kind of thing. You don't get a lot of productivity, but they do collect stuff, sargassum, for example, and that's where you would find the large fish.
Okay. So I know that you had mentioned about garbage, and that we consider that to be a pollution, of course, when it comes to the marine life that are going to be in those gyres, so the Sargasso Sea, just basically all within the ocean, and that's based on human activity, of course. So would you say that have been the most negative when it comes to places similar like the Sargasso Sea, as you mentioned?
Oh yes, it's a big problem, and trash has been either dumped or inadvertently escaped through the coastal area, which could be due to for a very long time. And with plastics in particular, you know, it degrades very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
It degrades, you know, photo degrades from sunlight, but it seems to just degrade into smaller and smaller pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Now are called microplastics or even nanoplastics, which are becoming an emerging topic of research. So you have these larger pieces of debris, as well as these micro and nanoplastics, and they can severely impact marine life in many different ways.
Mm.
May also be some indirect impacts on the Sargasso Sea by nutrient loading and pollution in coastal areas originate. It's not entirely clear where all the sargassum originates, but there's been larger influxes of sargassum into Caribbean islands lately, which has been by some studies down to the coast of South America, in particular the Amazon region, where riverine derived nutrients could be fostering excessive sargassum growth. Some of the sargassum may eventually be also accumulated into the middle of the Sargasso Sea.
Interesting. Well, that's really a lot of information.
So
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So sargassum ecosystem and supports a lot of marine life, but when masses and masses and masses of it land on an island, you know, it can cause a huge problem for coastal water quality, beach quality, and also bring in different organisms than you would typically get. It's called biorafting, when organisms sort of hitch a ride on something that floats across the ocean. So you can actually be changing the marine ecosystem in some of the Caribbean islands.
So do you believe that that has been significant have you seen that like throughout the decades, or has it been going on gradually over time?
Well, I mean, it's happened over time, but there have been several very, very large episodes of sargassum impact over the last decade in islands. And then it's difficult to trace exactly where this goes, but if it follows the Caribbean current up, potentially entering the Gulf of Mexico, or a branch that heads east of the islands, it would wrap around the Sargasso Sea.
So do you think there is a certain solution when it comes to fixing that problem?
Well, a lot more work needs to be done because this is a recent problem. But again, some studies that have been trying to link this to excessive nutrients South America. So different agricultural practices in South America may be contributing.
Okay. Wow. Well, Dr. Morey, what can people do to get involved in oceanography like you are right now, as well as just learn more about the Sargasso Sea?
Well, students, undergraduate students in particular, or high school students, can pursue a career in oceanography by studying basic science and mathematics at the undergraduate level. There aren't so many undergraduate oceanography. It's mostly done at the graduate level. But students enter the graduate programs from the basic sciences. It could be biology or chemistry, geology, math and computer science is where I came from, or engineering. So for a student who wants to get involved in oceanography as a career, that would be the pathway. Don't stop taking math and science, ever. For people who are probably past college, not planning on going back, there are a lot of opportunities for what are called citizen science in oceanography. There's too many to name now, but if you did just a very quick Google search of citizen science and oceanography, you'll be pointed to a number of sites. Some are operated by NOAA, some are operated by other agencies, or even university programs that allow opportunities for citizens to get involved in different aspects of oceanography.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Morey. That's all the time that we had for now, but thank you for being here on this call and sit down and just to share your wealth of knowledge on the sea and other parts of it, Pacific, Gulf of Mexico. I'm sure that our viewers out there really enjoyed what you had to say, and hopefully feel inspired to join the oceanography field, as well. And also just have you in mind, perhaps, whenever they see the Sargasso Sea face to face,
Thank you very much, Amira. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. For more topics like these on ocean conservation, subscribe to our email at environmentfloridacenter.org or reach out to us on social media via Facebook or Instagram. Look out for news on the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary Expansion Blueprint. All right, thank you.